Welcome everybody to another video where today I will make an announcement and a review. So come along, this will be exciting. Okay, so first thing first is I would like to announce that I'm planning to do a read-along with the channel The Book Chemist, where he will be reading Gravity is Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. I'll provide details of his video, his plans on doing a read-along, so if you're a Pynchon fan or if you've always wanted to read him, this could be a great opportunity because I find that The Book Chemist is very educational in this author. It's one of his favorite ones. It motivates me to join him, and I wish that you join us. Whoever's watching, whoever interest Pynchon peaks. So click on the links and check out his videos and his plans. So before I start Pynchon, I realized that he's a very difficult author to read because a lot of people are on opposite sides of the fence, but yet the one thing they do agree on is that they never feel like they get everything out of his books because they're so dense and they have so much information, and they're like little puzzles and whatnot. So I decided to pick up a Pynchon book before going into his most difficult one, trying to read an easier work where I may be educated on the style so that when I do come in I sort of have my feet already a little bit wet. So I picked up some short stories from him. The book is titled Slow Learner by Thomas Pynchon. Slow Learner is a book published in 1984 where Thomas Pynchon presents to us the 5 short stories that he wrote when in school and first beginning his writing career. The preface to these 5 stories is written by Thomas Pynchon, where he warns us as a reader that these stories are extremely flawed. But in his opinion, he let them stand without rewriting them or reworking them because he believes that as a reader you would learn more from them and from their mistakes. So he kept them as they are, prefacing them with a full explanation of all their flaws, of the things he didn't know, of the mistakes he makes, of the reasoning behind these mistakes, of his education level when writing these stories. So you have these works which show you the growth and the maturity of an author as he's starting out, and of all the mistakes he makes, and how susceptible authors are to making mistakes and the pitfalls that they may fall into when writing. I admire Pynchon for writing this preface because I think it takes a lot of effort to put out there a collection of stories and demand money for it, and yet be brave enough to shred it to pieces in the preface. It's hard for me to see that any other author would even attempt to do this, where you really have to have a lot of confidence to put out a work there and rip yourself to pieces in the introduction as he does. And I think that speaks very, very highly of him in my eyes, because even though I knew all the faults that would be present within these stories going in, I still thoroughly enjoyed every one of them. Like, yes, they're faulty. Nobody's denying that. But there's almost like these golden nuggets where you find the beauty within each story. And what makes it more beautiful is that there becomes this like stream between each story where you can see the growth and the experimentation that the author takes. The Small Rain is the first short story we are introduced to in this collection. Also the first short story published by Thomas Pynchon. In its description of a military base, it is very Hemingway-esque in that it deals with soldiers working within a military base. We have the main character Levine, who is awaiting his leave. He is called into office, thus expecting his leave from his higher officer, and notified that he's not getting this leave. He's not being permissed because he's a very important figure, and the troops have been called into a hurricane relief effort. You feel for Levine in his disappointment at the outcome of this situation, but you also respect Levine in the same instance that he takes his job seriously, and the duty that is assigned to him he follows through on. He doesn't rebel against it. Within the beginning of the story you get this camaraderie of troops and the way that men bond during an approaching disaster on the front lines, or when dealing with Mother Nature. There's everything you would probably expect on the peripheral of a war story, which is men drinking, men having a good time with each other, men poking fun at each other, and just the good jolly mood of the atmosphere before disaster is thwarted upon them. Kind of like the sunshine before the rainstorms, which is all very nice to see and enjoyable to read. But like a Hemingway story, underneath there's this iceberg theory, right? Where a lot of the things that aren't said, you as a reader pick out, if you're willing to do the work. You can see that underneath the attractive story, it's essentially a sad story of men being locked up within the confines of a base and not allowed any freedom unless disaster strikes or you have a war, a battle. It's as if this hurricane relief effort in a way gives meaning to the men who lack the meaning without action. The inaction within these military bases almost stunts the soldiers. You can see that when they're given freedom, these soldiers come to life. Levine, our main character, escapes the base to jump on a tugboat that he sees in order to rescue people from the depth of the floods, bring the drowned bodies to safety, excavating them from the ruins that nature has brought upon the land. The underlying theme of this story is that action is necessary for men. It gives them a purpose for the men to fulfill and creates value within their life and within their identity as soldiers. Asking a larger question, is war necessary to develop the men that we have within our army and to provide a purpose for their existence? In the final story within the work, titled The Secret Interrogation, you have Thomas Pynchon presenting you with a group of children before they have been corrupted, before the world has sort of sunk its claws. He takes it back to the original, back to youth. And here we have one of his best stories at how kids interpret the world and how much more pure their thoughts are when interacting with each other. The mask of society sort of goes away. You're presented how we as people should interact with each other and shed our skin colors, shed our prejudice, shed everything that corrupts us, that society has instilled within our minds. This innocence to me related the story of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain, and the joy I had when reading that book. One can't help reading this piece of work and finding parallels to Tom Sawyer. But then it gets this it's like warped into this story of racism and the youth having to confront these issues which are so peripheral to them that they are almost flabbergasted at the views of their parents and society in general. So essentially Thomas Pynchon's first story begins with a man in the army, then goes through the effects that the army has on people once they leave its confinements within the subsequent stories, That was a tongue twister. And using the last story to take us back to where it all began, when we were kids, when we just had fun, when we didn't have any prejudice. And this canon, not only are you sort of taking step by step through life of a person who devotes his vocation and his life to the service of his country. And just like the many steps that commitment has on a person's life in the grand scheme of things, you can also say the same thing about the styles that he develops himself, and you can watch him grow as a writer through the subsequent stages of his development. Did I enjoy reading Pynchon? Very much so. I can honestly say that I would love to read more by him, and I am excited to tackle The Gravity's Rainbow because I can see how much growth he's had through 5 stories, and I would imagine that it will not only pay off, but that you will see a lot more development within his style in his best works. So I'm genuinely excited to start this readathon with the book Chemist. I'll also leave a link to his announcement video as well as his review of this same text. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to like and comment and subscribe for future content that I plan to put out. See you guys in the next video. Have a great day.